Alright, let's see what we got here. Alright, I think we're on the play. We want to keep this, but it's kind of a high-risk hand. We need to draw another land, basically, in order to get going with this Nissa's Pilgrimage. But assuming we draw that land, the hand is pretty good. And here's an Oath of Nissa from our opponent. So we'll see what this is. It's Hangerback Walker, so this could be like the Naya tokens deck, potentially. We actually could just face up a Den Protector here. I guess we can do that. It's not the best, but we can potentially return it later with Crush of Tentacles, and we're kind of struggling here if we don't draw the third land, so... Alright, we didn't draw the third land. We did draw Elvish Visionary. And we at least got the land off the Visionary. But this Nissa's Pilgrimage isn't going to find us blue mana, which could be an issue, because we're going to need double blue for our Crush of Tentacles. But we can continue to get in with the Den Protector here. And we're going to be able to make full use out of this Nissa's Pilgrimage by being able to, by needing the land that comes to our hand. We needed to be able to play that for the turn to continue hitting our land drops. And we just need one more land to actually cast Nissa's Renewal. So if we draw a land here, we're in quite a good spot. Well, this wasn't the best land we could have drawn, so maybe I spoke a little bit too soon, but it's not a bad one. We can play the Skyline Cascade to stop this Hangerback Walker from untapping, so that's going to mean our opponent's going to have less incentive to level it up. And I think we might actually just go ahead and want to cast Sight Beyond Sight here. So let's see what we can find off of this. And we see Nissa Vastwood Seer, so let's take that one over a land. And just pass the turn back. And it looks like our opponent isn't going to level up their Hangerback Walker just because we did target it with the Skyline Cascade. So we're only seeing green and red lands from our opponent. It could just be a green-red deck. And now we're seeing Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. So it's kind of unclear exactly what our opponent's up to. But we're going to be able to replay this site and just grab this Rogue's Passage for another land drop. So we could cast Crush. We could basically cast anything we wanted. We want to on this turn. So pretty interesting decision that we have. If we do cast Nissa, we could be able to flip it this turn, but we may just want to go ahead and Nissa's Renewal. Our opponent's not really doing too much, so yeah, we're just going to go ahead and accelerate our lands, gain some life, and it's going to just put us in quite a nice spot. So we'll see if our opponent is going to do anything really significant, because so far they haven't really done too much. So here's a Chandra. That's going to tick up. Would have actually been more scared of it if it ticked down, but I think we can afford to make a chump block here on the Advocate, and we're just going to take the rest of the damage. So we do have to be a little bit worried about this Chandra, though we have Rogue's Passage. We'll be able to attack it pretty reasonably. But we do need to play a spell in order to be able to Surge the Crush. So let's just go ahead and start with this Elvish Visionary for starters. And then we can cast Crush with Surge and cast our Nissa Vastwood Seer to get a land, play it. Our Nissa is now gonna be able to flip here, and I think we can just go ahead and plus Nissa. Normally we don't want to minus just because we are gonna be returning our tokens a lot of the time with Crush. If our opponent plays Chandra this turn, it's not particularly annoying. Atarka, okay, I mean, it's also not that scary for us, to be honest. So we've got a ton of options once again. Let's go ahead and start with an attack for 8 damage. And it looks like our opponent is just going to go ahead and chump block, which is fine given the circumstances. It's understandable from our opponent's perspective to want to do that. So we're just going to go ahead and continue ramping out a bunch of threats. So Visionaries, and now cast a Den Protector face down. And so even if our opponent does elect to, say, play Chandra here and tick it down, that's not even that good. And okay, yep, it's Chandra. So we'll see what our opponent wants to do with it. Okay, it is going to be a tick down. So we are going to be able to unmorph this Den Protector here. And we have a choice in terms of what we would like to get back. Let's see. So, yeah, I think we want to get back the Crush. Most likely. Alright, yeah, let's go ahead and get Crush back. So, not a bad turn for our opponent, although we just drew Part the Water Veil, which is pretty great for us. So, we can part the Water Veil onto this Lumbering Falls. So, let's do that. So now we have a 6/6, and we can, if we want to, we can send to sleep the Sylvan Advocate. We can, yeah, I think we actually may have the win next turn, so let's send to sleep the Sylvan Advocate. And we're just going to attack our opponent straight away with the Lumbering Falls. That's going to put them at 10. Now we just play our face down Den Protector, untap, and we're just gonna attack our opponent with both of our creatures and animate the Lumbering Falls. So that's gonna be it. So game 1, we kind of won it out of nowhere a little bit. We saw some big spells from our opponent. We also saw some smaller creatures like Advocate, stuff like that. We definitely want to bring in Ulamog here. And probably afford to shave on Sent to Sleep. Negate is a card we may want as a way to counter cards like Chandra. So, yeah, I think I'm fine with cutting some amount of Sent to Sleeps. We can cut a couple of those. We're on the draw. I think Whirl-a-Rogue is probably not that great against a Chandra deck. So, fine with cutting Whirl-a-Rogue. Besides that, do we need to do a whole lot against this green-red deck with Hangerbacks? With Atarkas? Maybe we want the second Sent to Sleep. I don't know. I mean, we didn't really need it that game. We were just so far ahead the whole time. It felt like. Nissa Vastwood Seer is another card we could shave on, just because our opponent has Atarka to be able to get rid of it. So, yeah, maybe we go like 2 Sent to Sleeps, 1 Nissa. This seems pretty reasonable, so let's try it. So we are going to be on the draw here, and it looks like a pretty weird hand for our deck. 3 copies of Anticipate. Wow. Alright, let's hope our opponent does not have a very aggressive draw. We didn't see our opponent seemed like more of a big mana deck, so if we are allowed to set up here with Anticipates, that's going to be a lot better for us. And I think we just want to do that rather than casting the Elvish Visionary this turn. And now we see another creature that we hadn't seen before in Tireless Tracker, but going to go ahead and actually just take this Nissa's Pilgrimage to be able to ramp us out. It does mean we're going to have to say goodbye to a couple of Den Protectors, and naturally we just drew a Pilgrimage for the turn. Happens a reasonable amount. You anticipate into a card, and then you're like, oh, drew it anyways, and now you wish you had made the other choice. But our opponent's going to get a lot of clues here. Explosive Vegetation plus Tireless Tracker is definitely cause for concern. So, got a couple of options here. We can just go ahead and Pilgrimage again. Do we want to get even all of our lands? We'll just go ahead and yeah, we'll just go ahead and get a bunch of forests. Play our land for the turn. Play Elvish Visionary. This may mean that we're going to have to discard. In fact, we are going to have to discard. So, yeah, I think we can just pitch a land here. And World Breaker is actually going to be very good here. It's going to take out one of our islands. And yeah, that's just really, really nice for our opponent. Crush of Tentacles does not interact well with World Breaker at all. And that's a card we had not seen in the previous game, but of course now we just saw it. So let's go ahead and anticipate here. Gonna go ahead and grab the blue land. And yeah. We don't need to pilgrimage for the full amount of forests. So we're ramping back up, but we may not have time to play this Ulamog here, which, of course, we would love to cast Ulamog in this matchup. But, yeah, Chandra, that's going to basically close the door on the game here. The Chandra can plus. Now we're basically forced into a chump block situation. So we can chump the World Breaker and take 10. So I guess we did draw the island. We can cast Crush with Surge this turn. So I guess we go ahead and do that after anticipating. Still not the greatest situation, but we'll deal with it. So, yep. Just going to go ahead and Surge out the Crush of Tentacles. It's going to get us an 8/8 Octopus, but our opponent can just replay Chandra or World Breaker this turn. So we'll see which one of those two cards our opponent elects to cast here. Or it could be even two things. So yeah, it's going to be Tireless Tracker to get a clue. And World Breaker is going to be able to take out our Lumbering Falls here. So we can see what we get off this Sight Beyond Sight. But yeah, that's just... this stuff is not gonna do it. So we'll just let our opponent kill us, basically. There's the Chandra. It's gonna tick up. And this is gonna send or force a game 3. Alright, so we see a little bit more of what's going on. Our opponent is a big mana deck, basically. Not too sure what the hangerbacks and stuff like that were, why they were in our opponent's deck, but they definitely were. On the play, we can probably don't need as many of the Senta Sleeps. Negate seems pretty good. Yeah, I think we just want to be trying to execute our game plan faster. Crush of Tentacles we want to be playing before our opponent gets to World Breaker mana. That seems like it's going to be one of the key factors to the game. Do we want to do anything else? This seems fine. So, alright, we're going to keep, we've got a negate here. We may want to try to catch something like our opponent's Explosive Vegetation with that, but we are going to lead off on this Elvish Visionary next turn. And see what we draw into. So we like something like Anissa's Pilgrimage here optimally. So yeah, I think we have a couple options for this turn. Playing Den Protector face down to deal with this Advocate seems like a reasonable option. So let's try doing that. And our opponent is going to take this opportunity to Nissa's Pilgrimage. So that's going to put them ahead in terms of the mana situation. So now we still haven't drawn a land, unfortunately. And the Elvish Visionary did not find us a land. So that's going to put us in squarely behind in this game. Wow. Our opening hand looked pretty solid, but this has not gone the way we've wanted it to at all. So it could be our opponent just slams a big spell this turn, or just is content with cracking clues. Either way, though, we're actually in trouble. So how do we proceed here? I think we want to try to take one of these Sylvan Advocates off the table, or the Tireless Tracker off the table, but we're going to gang up on a Sylvan Advocate, as bad as it seems. But yeah, our opponent's just going to get even more clues here. And I don't really see how we're going to get out of this spot, unfortunately. But we'll do what we can. So now our opponent has access to even more mana, and World Breaker, that's going to be enough. Even if we are able to Crush of Tentacles, the World Breaker is just going to come right back. So, going to go ahead and concede.